Yeah. So basically, I'm I'm uh I'm homeschooled, or was homeschooled.
Mm.
I grew up classically educated. My family are believing Christians, and they kind of helped build up a significant portion of the homeschooling infrastructure back in the early '90s in
Mm.
the area. So that that's kind of like my early background. In case people are wondering, I've been accused multiple times of being Jewish, but but I'm but as far as my parents 23 and me are, they're just disappointed that they're so English. Uh,
Yeah.
the so
Not that
yeah.
there's anything wrong with being Jewish. No, we support the nation of Israel and whatever the government tells me. Okay,
You
go on.
know, as I like to say, I view Israel like an extension of Europe. The Balkans part of Europe. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like my early life background.
Mhm.
Um, is just classically educated, child child of engineers, that sort of thing.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, yeah. My family's quite large. Um, I have quite a few siblings.
Oh, nice.
The
Uh, are you the oldest
Yeah,
child, or where do you fall in the pecking order?
yeah, kind of complicated to explain that one, um, because we have some are adopted, some are from other situations. It's my parents my parents did was it foster care, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
that's yeah,
Doing doing the charity work for society, the broken society.
yeah, yeah.
That's not bad though. It must have been a weird. What was that like growing up?
Uh, Pretty rough.
I guess for you it's normal, but
Yeah, yeah. Some of it's good. Some of them I love dearly, but then there are rough patches. You have to deal with particularly things like rads, where group of kids essentially become psychopathic because they fail to develop a normal emotional attachment. So they threaten violence and whatnot. Like I know of one family where they each actually tried to burn the whole house down, and they fortunately the fire alarm caught it.
oh wow.
So yeah, it's yeah,
What do you call it? Rads?
yeah, radical attachment disorder.
Oh wow. Okay. I guess that must happen a lot with foster kids and kids that go into that system, right? Constantly being chucked, passed around by the government.
I'm not aware of what like the rate is, but it does happen enough to be common.
Well, I know in where I live, half the homeless people came from the foster system,
Oof.
which is like that doesn't tell you that like kids need families and governments are bad at raising children.
Yeah,
what else?
the yeah the uh yeah. Honestly, I think that in the case of like foster stuff, we should be really trying to like reconnect people to their families on
Hmm.
instead of putting them into the foster system. Like
Yeah, like
that's what they
uncle or
traditionally do in Africa.
yeah, like someone that's connected to them like genetically, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's sad. I had some like this is way before I was born, obviously, but I had some of my grandfather's cousins went through that system, and two of them out of the four kids, these are all, like people my mom's age and older. Um, two kids killed themselves, or sorry, self-deleted, and then one of them is basically like a he lives in a van down by the river, and then the other one became like a born again Christian. But other than that, but I mean, one for four ain't bad, but like that's still pretty brutal, you know.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah. It is.
compared to the rest of the family, like they're it's completely different. You know, I feel bad for them, and thankfully one of them did quite well. But yeah, it's just like a meat grinder in some sense of the soul. But yeah, that sucks. Oh, were most of them normal, or did I lose you? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I muted for a moment.
No, no worries. We're
My phone was at
yeah, no
my
worries.
phone had trouble unmuting. But
Yeah, no
yeah,
worries. Most of them are
most of them
normal.
have turned out. Yeah, most have turned out normal. Um, as far as I know. Um, but yeah, it, it's a it, it kind of gives you a real perspective on life where you realize that a lot of people like to romanticize adoption, but in
Hmm.
reality, it's beautiful, but it's rough.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how I kind of liken it almost to like war, where there's this weird, like you see this as soldiers, where on the one hand, you know, because they know it, they hate it more than anyone, but also they will tell you, what was it like this channel called Eli the Computer Guy? He was a soldier, and he's a tech YouTuber, but he said one time something very interesting. He's like, if only I could bottle how being in combat feels.
Hmm.
Like the best way he was able to describe it is, uh, you could taste sound because everything is just like your entire being is all oriented towards one task in perfect flow.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
crazy.
a lot of soldiers are addicted to that.
And that's when they come back and they're kind of like messed up because they kind of want it to be like it used to be.
Yeah, yeah, particularly when combat recreates kind of like very primitive style conditions. Like you saw this with the Second Battle of Fallujah.
Mm.
Because a lot of people don't realize what was so unique about it. They just kind of see the death, like the death tolls or something like that in the abstract. But in reality, for the first time in a while, the U.S. military did a very large style Bronze Age, almost esque, um, Bronze Age style of warfare upon a city. They just surrounded it. They put leaflets saying, "Get out with no weapons and you get amnesty."
Mm.
Everyone else is free game, and they
Mm.
just went house to house, shelling it, then going house to house, clearing room by room, and they got to keep the more trophies and whatnot. Like it was very atavistic behavior compared
Mm.
to the typical U.S. style of doctrine, because ultimately it's cheaper to spend, politically speaking, particularly to spend $3 million on a missile than to send a squad of guys and maybe have one injury and one killed.
Mm-hmm. That's there's some movies on that, right?
I'm not aware if there's movies on the Second Battle of Fallujah. I'm sure there are.
Yeah. I bet you they wouldn't show it exactly how it was anyways, but they
Oh
probably gay
yeah,
they gay the hell out of that now.
oh yeah. I've heard stories from veterans about what they did. It's it's just wild stuff, like throwing white phosphorus into trenches, into tunnels, and then bulldozing it over. Like, oof, just they were not holding back then.
Yeah, that's nice. So moving on, this is a completely different topic, obviously, but very smooth transition. So who is your favorite author?
That's pretty hard to pin down
Mm-hmm.
because you got so many different genres and whatnot and what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just sheer style of writing, it's got to be Nietzsche.
Mm.
Like Nietzsche just does, at least for like the nonfiction side of things, broadly speaking. If you're talking about fiction, stylistically, I'm split between Shakespeare and Milton.
Mm.
But um, but in terms of prose, just generally speaking, I find Nietzsche to be like, even in translation, his way of putting things together in very short and provocative manners. I'm a great admirer of the aphoristic style.
Hmm. Well, what are your favorite works by him?
Probably my favorite work from him is I got it's gonna sound very basic, but it kind of does a really good job of introducing people to both his style and the broader scope of his work. Because
Hmm.
the latter stuff he writes is much more complicated and it is more enjoyable. But at the same time, people get so tripped up. It was only recently, for example, where people have popular understanding of Nietzsche saying God is dead has been, corrected by people like Peterson. It's
Hmm.
probably genealogy of morality, simply because
Hmm.
it's so straight to the point that it allows him to be enjoyed by a wider audience without too much misunderstanding.
Hmm. I was recently reading The Will to Power, but it's more like a collection of notes essentially. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
his other stuff is very strong. I'm a big fan of Dostoevsky myself. That's my favorite guy. But I mean, like this again,
Hmm.
as you said, it's sort of hard to choose
Another,
exactly.
another
Right?
one of my favorite authors is actually a Canadian.
Who?
Are you familiar with Are you familiar with Marshall McLuhan?
Yep, probably the second most famous
Yeah.
Canadian after Jordan Peterson now.
Mhm.
Or maybe Wayne Gretzky, but
Yeah, yeah. The ones that you don't have to put the caveat of, did you know this person was Canadian?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a funny one. That's good. What do you what's your favorite with him?
Uh, I really like his Gutenberg Galaxy,
Hmm.
um, where he expounds upon the progression of mechanical media and how uh, and how it affects different the way people perceive things and whatnot. Like, it's been a while since I've reread him. I did that back in college. I'll have to brush up on it, but I did part of my thesis work back then was digging partially into McLuhan and some Baudrillard as well. To Because the nature of perception and reality has always fascinated me. Um, but I find both Baudrillard and McLuhan's perspectives kind of incomplete um, in respect to how they look at media perception and distortion. They're very resignationist about it,
Hmm.
or they're very resigned about the whole affair.
Hmm. Yeah, I can feel that. Considering what we've gone through the last, it's sort of like a lot of people have gone through like an awakening, like um, about the fake news or whatever. But then there's so many, like, I don't know, normies that just like don't think about it at all. They just like see the news as like a reflection of reality. Um,
Yeah,
but it is completely even if every story is true, like the selection of them is like uh, they chose these particular stories, out of like a million different stories that they could have chosen, which they
yeah.
only choose if
There's
it fits the narrative.
there's a very funny inversion between us and the mainstream media, broadly speaking, because the mainstream media often will say, "Oh, you cowards, why don't you show your faces?" But in many cases, they're using their real face nominatively, but they're actually lying, either
Exactly.
by omission or by selection. They're using the facade of truth and having skin in the game to, in some cases, just blatantly lie. Like we're seeing with Will Stansel, where where Steve Saylor is just like refuting him on every point, and all he can do is just scream and say Nazi and say that's not true.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas us on the DR, largely speaking, we use avatars and we participate in hyperreality in that sense. We're creating personas and such. but by and large, aside from the occasional joke, uh,
Yeah.
the you know, source I saw it in a dream. The aside from the occasional jokes and whatnot, by and large, we are driven to truth. I forget who said it. I think it may have been Borzoi that said that the problem with the right is that it's will to truth, whereas the left is will to power.
Hmm.
So
Well, that's what I've come to a conclusion over the years is because I used to argue with leftists, sort of like Dave did, and what I've learned is that like it doesn't matter if you show them a source or whatever because they don't read it, so you're just wasting your time. And if they show you a source, it's probably paused and all bullshit anyways, like most of the time. So like, what's the point of reading their sources? Uh, So it's like you're sort of fighting if you're trying to like source like some stuff's intuitive, like some stuff you don't need like a scientific study for, like you know, um, but they really do
yeah,
insist.
the NSS type studies, the no shit Sherlock studies. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, or like the reverse science
turn,
studies
uh,
or backwards
turns out
science.
that turns out that people have higher satisfaction when their partner's more attractive. Uh,
Yeah, or people that do exercise are less likely to be obese. You know,
whoa, whoa.
and yeah, so but yeah, if I used to come across it all the time. I started wasting hours and hours, and then I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. I guess uh,
There are
more.
some people that do need to do the good work there. People like Sailor, what is it, monitoring bias or whatever,
Mhm.
uh, and such that are pointing out the fraudulent nature of our universe of many university studies and whatnot.
Yeah, it's just but yeah, either way, then eventually what I learned was I figured I was repeating myself all the time. So then I was like, okay, well, I'll just write the idea down in an essay. That way, if I come across this problem again, I'll just forward them the essay. And if they don't read it, well, then it wouldn't have been worth arguing with them anyways. So, you know, compromise.
Yeah, that's a good policy to have.
Yeah.
And it's better than what's his name policy. I forget the leftist that Dave was arguing with a while back about. He's
Mc,
like, just read my book, read my.
oh,
it's
McManus.
it's McManus, yeah. Read my 400 page, $200 book. You know,
Oh man, imagine if every question you had to buy a $200 book for. That's a fucking grift.
uh, it's so absolutely and utterly insane.
We got to start putting
Just
out books like that.
yeah, this is why I will always revere Aaron Schwartz. He was a martyr for freedom of information, even though
Oh
he
yeah,
helped found Reddit.
was he the guy that did the? No, that's not the gun guy, right? No, the guy that
No,
made.
no, he was an MIT student. He helped found Reddit and build Reddit, and then he was caught downloading a bunch of JSTOR, the JSTOR library, and they were alleging that he was going to just release it into the wild. Um, and then they threw the feds at him. Uh, and
Hmm.
as a result of that, he self deleted.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I'm thinking of the guy that. I was thinking of that guy that came up with those plans to build printed weaponry. Let's say.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's a different guy. That's Cody Wilson.
yeah, that's stuff good. Michael Pohl talks about him quite a bit.
Yeah,
Interesting story. Anyways, here both heroes, obviously. Heroes for truth. Um, so, anyways, I'll move on to the next question because we could talk all day on this. Favorite author,
yeah.
keep expanding it. What first moved you into this sphere?
Uh, Honestly, like the first sort of impetus that probably pushed me down this road was I
Hmm.
got into running.
Okay,
And
based.
I was interested as to why like the Kenyans were so dominant at marathon running. and there was a lot of cope about the high altitude, the type of diet, and the particularly boomer flavored one. They all run to school, you know, uh, and it's like well, why not the Swiss then? Why not the Nepalese? Why not the and and none of it made sense until I discovered that, oh wait, so the Ethiopians used to be the ones that were dominant. Then the Kenyans exploded onto the scene, and it's all from like these two tribes in Kenya and Ethiopia that produce like 90% of their runners.
Mm,
This is genes, okay? Like now we can be honest here. It's all genes.
yeah.
Um, that sparked an interest in behavioral genetics and human psychology. I was always fascinated by human psychology and intelligence because I wanted to understand myself because I was pretty alienated as a kid from my peers. And then discovering about that, discovering human differences and variation, and stumbling upon alternative hypothesis, Steve Saylor, Stefan Molyneux, etc., kind
Mm.
of just ensured I would enjoy a long career as a intellectual thought criminal.
It's funny how like people reject that idea, like, but at the same time they'll accept things like you know, evolution and stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah,
like they'll mainstream that,
evolution
but like
done
it stops at the human neck apparently, or
and
body as well. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. It's because it's so intensely personal. People, even though they're materialists, still believe in a human soul rightly,
Mm.
even if on an intuitive level. And they feel like that's under threat because they don't have a proper understanding of like the difference between the soul and the mind. Um, that's why whenever you convince a liberal that as soon as you convince a liberal that you're right about human differences, they immediately jump to like, okay, so we should just kill them all. It's like, no, why would you do
Yeah.
that?
What the fuck is up with that? Like they're all these genocidal maniacs on the edge of a string. Like they're just waiting for it to go off.
It's because they do genuinely think that they hold this weird contradiction. And Murray's noted this, that simultaneously IQ doesn't matter, but it's also the most important thing in the world because they will look down upon particularly their fellow co-ethnics that are not educated, and they're coding that as low IQ.
Mm.
Um, and they it oozes out of their behavior at every point. So as soon as you flip that switch, and they realize like, oh no, the world the world is this Darwinian Darwinian um, what's his name? I'm blanking on the English author's name right now. Darwinian. Um,
Harsh Darwinian conditions.
who, no. Leviathan. Leviathan state of nature. I'm blanking on the author that wrote it.
Oh.
Um, yeah, Leviathan-esque state of nature um, world. Then they're like, oh, so yeah, we should just we should just eliminate the lesser because now we know for a fact that there are the lesser. Because that's all they measure by. They don't measure
Yeah.
by. They don't have any type of intrinsic or category for intrinsic human worth. They just think the potentiality of humanity. Like I saw a recent feminist talk about how abortion isn't a big deal of early babies because there's intentionality that there would be a future. There would be a future for them
Yeah, I saw that
for the
same
ones that
thing.
lived. And then if they didn't, yeah, Sargon did an article video on it. It's like it's the most utterly insane, deranged worldview, but a lot of people implicitly hold to that. So as soon as you tell them, no, sorry, McNamara tried this. He tried to take people with too low IQs and train them for the army, and it was horrific. Um, no matter no matter the U.S. Army literally controlling their lives, like they just
Yeah.
couldn't raise the bar. Um, so yeah, that's the type of so you view it as essentially like a life not worth living because you're not able to improve.
Well, it's sort of like in Iceland, for example. Iceland's not totally liberal. Like it's very liberal, but it's not completely. But one of the things they've done is they've completely genocided through abortion and selective what do you pre-screening all
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Down syndrome, and like as if Down syndrome people don't deserve to live, you know. And like
Yeah.
I've met people with Down syndrome. Yeah, they're a little bit, you know, not as smart as the average person, but like they're generally happy, or you know, they enjoy things. They're funny. You can talk to them, and they're like kids for the whole lives. Like who wouldn't want to be a kid their whole life if you could, you know? Um, and they do have heart problems, but like lots of people have heart problems, you know. But do they need to be genocided? I don't know. It just
Yeah, no, it speaks to a very small soul. Like, personally speaking, to speak a little more personally, like I myself am very alienated from my fellow average person because from my fellow average man because I'm just a mixture of smartism, family background. I'm just very I'm not I have a 1,000 year lease on the very top floor of the ivory tower. Uh, the
mm,
so I just live and love abstractions and ideas and whatnot, and that's that's really what I love. And so consequently, it's like, how do you touch base with people? Ordinary people who are talking about sports and such. Um,
yeah,
but
same
saying
here.
that, at the same time, one of my brothers, he has an intellectual disability. He's he's never going to be able to be independent, and
Mm,
it can be frustrating at times dealing with him. At the same time, I deeply love him. I wouldn't hesitate to give my life for him. I certainly would give up. I give up my four limbs to be able to undo that intellectual disability that God has seen fit to put upon him. Um, at the same time, I don't view him as any lesser. I just view it as a consequence of the fall. Um, and I
well,
have
you
the
certainly
hope that
wouldn't. You certainly
hmm?
wouldn't put them down like the liberals seem to want to do.
Oh, gee, yeah, no,
And
yeah,
I use that word ironically. I don't use it because I think that's an appropriate word to call that, but that's what they would say, you know.
yeah,
Uh,
they would, and
like in
that's
Canada,
ultimately what we're fighting for.
well, in Canada, it's got so ridiculous with this medical assistance in dying. You know, a lot of people. I try to bring this up in the sphere sometimes, but a lot of people, it's just so dark they don't really want to talk about it. But they're trying to expand it so if you're mentally ill and you're like a just as soon as you turn 19, you can just go rope yourself. You know, obviously
Yeah,
with like injection with a doctor, but that's still the same thing, and it's
yeah,
started being romanticized, which is just so dark.
yeah. It's if you really want to get fired up about that, there's a really good video by a veteran talking about one of the Canadian veterans that was essentially badgered and railroaded into offing himself because of mental issues. Um, yeah, the dude
Yeah,
does not hold back. Like it's just uh, that, that's particularly, especially because of like mental issues. I can kind of understand the logic of where if a person's like terminal cancer, very expensive
hmm,
treatment and whatnot, particularly like in the U.S. Where you do actually have to pay for your medical care directly. I can understand someone saying I'd rather just have a nice trip of morphine and not have to suffer and also defray my family the cost. Um, that sort of thing. I've lived a long life. I got stage 4 pancreatic cancer or whatever. I'm gonna die. Uh,
yeah.
I
Oh,
can at least
I
understand that sort
understand
of
that.
like,
Yeah, yeah, that makes
but
sense to
like
me.
mental, but a dude that has like mental issues where it's like, yeah, he was a vet. He has PTSD. It's not like it's not exactly like the most. It's not like this absurdly like unicorn blood treatment, expensive unicorn blood treatment or something like that. Like
Hmm.
the man's the man served your country, and then you just put him down like an old dog.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, for like I can somewhat understand like terminal illness, which is what it was meant for. But of course, all those warnings that people were saying, like, oh, this will be expanded to this, and then it'll be expanded to that slowly over time. Pretty soon we'll be um, putting teenagers down because they were depressed because their girlfriend broke up with them or something. Um, and I mean that hasn't happened yet because the law hasn't changed, but they're literally like working on that. And then when people confront them with like the darkness of this, they're like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, we're gonna get that done as soon as possible." And it's like, dude, that's not why we're complaining. We're not complaining because you're not doing it fast enough. We're complaining that you're doing it, and
Yeah,
like,
that
it's just sick.
yeah, it's just it. Yeah, the utter insanity of particularly like when the state controls medical care so intertwined. Like you should never like it's one thing if a private citizen just says I want the right to be able to order a lethal dose of morphine so that way I can end myself. Okay, that's a little bit different of a context, say in like the U.S. versus versus where the state has the power of life and death. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
why would you open that can of worms? Uh, you know, it just boggles the mind. Like you saw that
Plus,
in England with Alfie Evans too.
oh, and the it's weird because like it kind of transects with in parallel with like the trans thing with the kids. And I mean, I don't honestly don't care. Like I think it's I kind of think we should ban it for adults as well because, and that's a very radical position here. Um, because like it will lead to kids having it done to them. I think like I used to think, okay, well, let the adults do it, who cares, right? So I was sort of a libertarian attitude to it, but I thought like if adults do it, then kids are going to be like, this is normal, and
Yeah,
and it's going to be
yeah,
so
no,
easy to brainwash them.
we
Because if you think about it, the
the
trans thing is sort of like is sort of a death in some sense, right? If you cut your balls off and anyways, yeah.
yeah, it's it, one of the things that liberals have done to the English language as of late is overstretching categories into different and applying them in improper contexts.
Hmm.
For example, I they'll shoot back at conservatives where they'll tastelessly bring their like 12-year-old to Hooters or something like that, and they'll say, "Oh, look, they're grooming their child." I'm like, well, one, it's not grooming. It or it's just straight up isn't like the 12-year-old boys by that time, quite frankly, are already interested in women. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not right that they do that. I don't think you should be encouraging your sons to openly lust at that age, but
yeah,
or at any age.
but
Um,
at least you can see that it's like positive for like reproductive
yeah,
possibilities. Like,
but but also for any type of like, stereotyping or mentioning to your kids that you're looking for a wife someday or a husband.
mhm.
They call it grooming. It's like no, it's called modeling what is normal and good and right behavior, and telling your kids, hey, one day you're gonna you're probably gonna become a dad and a mom. Like you gotta
Mhm.
prepare for that. You gotta be thinking about what you're gonna be in the future. We all ask your kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's not grooming them into being a construction worker or a firefighter.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, people that do that, I just want to like do violence to them, like to say like, okay, well, obviously we denounce all violence on this channel, but it makes you want to do violence to people that say stuff like, oh, telling your kids like it'd be great to having children is very meaningful, um, and it enriches your life. Telling them that's grooming, it's like that's not the same as tricking some kid into chopping his manhood off and pulling his testes out and pretending and larping as a female. It's just not.
yeah,
That's not the same.
yeah,
So
it's Let's move on from something
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
from all these dark topics. Let's bring the conversation down, man. Like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's move on. Next question. What role are you currently playing in the sphere, and what projects have you been working on?
right now, I've been doing a pretty good job of trying to build up the basket weaving scene out here in DC. Me and the
Hmm.
Politicrat are kind of the two guys that are agitating more and more for people to gather together IRL, and partially break down the digital barrier.
And you
Um,
and you held an event last December. Yes.
yeah, and you helped promote it. It was a masquerade ball
Yeah.
um, for Christmas.
And
That went what's that?
I was gonna say I was gonna ask how it went. You're already into it.
Oh yeah, it went pretty well. We do have some we did have to do an after a post mortem analysis on how we can improve and whatnot. Obviously, you're gonna always do that for a first event.
Mm.
Um, I'd say overall it went pretty well. Um, Dave went there and did a speech. Michael Paul went there and did a speech. I and some others did some speeches. Um, so yeah, I'd say overall it was a success. We plan on doing one for the Preakness. That one's
Sorry,
gonna be a little more low key. Yeah, the
the
Preakness is the
yeah.
hmm?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Preakness is the second race in the Triple Crown series. Most famous one being the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, okay.
Um, the the Preakness is held in Baltimore.
Okay. So you're gonna do one at that or for it, like around it.
For it, not around it. We're not getting we're not getting a venue at Pilmco racetracks.
I'm guessing. I don't know anything about it, but that would be pretty expensive. I'm assuming,
Yeah, it's
or
like what
impossible.
is it? I think it's like $800 for a ticket for one of the nice pre-established parties. So yeah.
That's cool. When's this gonna? When does this happen?
Let me check real quick. It's in May. I think I want to say May 17th.
Oh, that's your
Let
next
me
weave,
see.
essentially.
Yeah, our next big weave. That's gonna be it. The let me pull it up. I have it on the I have it on the events calendar.
Okay. Is this
Um,
open, or do you have it just a sort of exclusive?
it's gonna be open. We haven't been doing the what is it? We haven't been doing the we haven't done a huge amount of work on the promotion side, but we're looking at venues right now. And we should have that together shortly.
Hmm.
Um, but but yeah, it's gonna be a nice low key event where you can just dress up, eat, drink, talk, bet, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And you've been working on events throughout the year, essentially, like smaller ones, along with your buddies.
Yeah, yeah. We've been working on just mainly small events. Just hey, want to meet up this weekend? Recently we had our first meeting of the Old Federal Club as well. We're trying to get a chapter for the Old Glory Club up and running in the Maryland and DC and Northern Virginia area.
That's cool. Old Federal Club, eh?
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best name we got. Originally, it was going to be called the Old Line Club, but then I realized we couldn't really break up the DC area, the Beltway area,
Yeah.
in a satisfactory manner. And if we gave the Beltway its own region or its own chapter, then Maryland's kind of like almost cut in half.
It,
Um,
how big is your chapter so far? Like roughly speaking, don't
uh,
I wouldn't give exact numbers.
yeah, about a dozen interested parties.
Well, that's good. That's a good start. And there's already a Virginia chapter, anyways, right? So it's like um, there is some expansion.
Yeah. The Virginia chapter is it's mainly in like Tidewater, Southern Virginia.
Yeah.
It's not the entirety of Virginia.
Yeah, it's just the southern area. That's Harvey Wallbanger, I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's Harvey's chapter. It's called the Old Dominion Club, if I recall correctly.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. And do you have anything? Are you doing the ball again, or what's your thoughts on that?
Do Yeah, we'll do another mistletoe masquerade ball. This time it will be this time around we'll have a little more time to plan. Last time it was pretty it was kind of rushed. Um,
Yeah, we had about a month.
but
Not even a
yeah,
month.
so so yeah, this time around we'll definitely have more time to plan, build a little bit of a war chest for a better venue. And more time to be able to pick a better venue. Um, Not that there was anything wrong with the first venue, but or the venue we did, but it wasn't exactly a ballroom.
It was a little
Next time
tight.
around, it wasn't too tight.
Oh, okay.
It just wasn't like it just wasn't a ballroom. It was more of a nice party floor for a restaurant.
Hmm.
It worked well enough. It worked well enough for purpose, but next time around, we need to be able to do some of the more traditional American dances, um, like the Virginia reel, things like that.
What's the Virginia reel? Is it like square dancing or?
It's a variation of English line dancing.
Oh, okay, line dancing. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like you see it. Like for the viewers, that's what's like in the what is it? The Pride and Prejudice film, uh,
mm,
where they with Keira Knightley. That's English line dancing.
that's cool. Hopefully, people will check that out. Um, so, moving on. Before we get to like current, more recent projects, how do you envision like the future in both the sphere and let's say your area right now?
I'm pretty optimistic about our sphere simply
Mm,
because a lot of people are blackpilled because particular sub movements will like shatter, and then they'll miss that we went from voting in Mitt Romney for the GOP candidate to like something like 70% of the Republican base believes in the Great Replacement, which is totally proven by fact checkers to both not be true and
So
totally
they're like
justified.
missionaries then, missionaries to Canada.
The
mm,
so so we've moved like a ton of our talking points have basically filtered up into mainstream American right wing politics. Uh,
mm.
Now it's just a matter of guys. I know it's fun. I know it's fun to be spurring out online. You seriously need to go to like your local GOP chapters, volunteer yourself, and wait for the boomers to die.
Yeah, yeah.
Or even not, or if they're better, they could just be like, I'm too old for this. You seem like a well spoken young man. You take power. I'm done with this. It'll be a mix of both. But yeah, like seriously, go. The whole part of the process of that Moldbug said about become worthy of power, be ready to accept power. Um, is you part of the be ready part is showing up. You'd be shocked how much that matters. I
Hmm.
forget who said it that I think it was Woody Allen that said like 90% of success is showing up. Um, it really is that simple. Just being reliable and on time matters enormously. Like touching back on weaving, like that's like I really try to be good on my promises to weave. Simply because I've noticed that our generation, and it's probably always been the case, but maybe it's particular to our generation, is that we're a bunch of flakers. Even me. Um, we claim we're going to show up at something, and then it turns out that only like a third of the people show up. Um,
Yeah, I have
like,
noticed that as well.
like guys, if I can impart to you one bit of wisdom right now, you think you're conscientious enough, you are only 30% as conscientious as you ought to be.
Yeah, I've noticed with I'm in my mid 30s, but I've noticed like people 5 or so years younger than me, even a couple years younger than me, they like even well in my generation as well. Not myself. I usually show up to things that I say I'm going to do, but they don't they won't show up to these things. So you get everything organized, and uh, then half the people are like, or they show up late, or they're like, oh yeah, I'll be there in like whatever, um, half an hour or whatever. But but that's like wasting everyone else's time. So show up on time.
Yeah,
Not to be
yeah.
a boomer,
It
but
also, yeah, it does put. I've recently had this like, I probably wouldn't have noticed it nearly as much if I wasn't at my current job with a small business, where you're like one of five guys, and if you don't show up, like that really screws them over. It's not like a large organization where, oh well, someone is probably going to have like a 20% shittier day or something like that when they split your load across like, three different people.
mm,
Um, when it's like, yeah, it's either you or the boss is going to have to take over the role, and then he's not able to focus on his work. Like,
yeah,
it really puts some perspective. You can be. There's been days where I've literally thrown up on the lawn, and I still went into work simply because I'm like, well, I don't feel that bad,
yeah.
Uh,
And if not you, then who?
yeah,
That's often that's. I mean, I think there was a point in my career where I went from the guy that didn't want to he was just like, I'm just going to work to make a paycheck, right? And then and you can go a long time like that, just thinking that way. But eventually you get to a point where it's like, um, I show up because if I don't show up and do what I have to do, then a bunch of stuff can't happen. And society it needs to move forward, and things need to get done. And if no one did anything, we'd be that's a lot of reason why Africa and all these poor countries are like that. People just don't do
yeah.
anything.
The wage slave mentality is largely self-imposed. Like like I get the whole like you're not independently wealthy bit, but like seriously
Mm,
though, unless you're doing a genuine BS job, which a lot of the claimed BS jobs aren't BS jobs.
mm,
It's just, oh, I don't feel aesthetically satisfied in my job. What do you mean I'm a gopher? Or like duct taper. That was just like, no, you're a fixer. You fix stuff. You just don't have like you're maintaining a system that's probably not optimal, but you're fix. Like, how's that not? I don't get how that's BS. Someone help me here. The English language seems to be broken. Um,
yeah,
the
yeah,
but yeah, seriously, like even if you're like an Uber driver, like or like a not an Uber driver, like a a DoorDash driver. Yeah,
yeah,
to a certain degree, you're participating in like the mass decadence of society, but in some cases, you're really helping someone. Someone
yeah.
may really just be having a terrible day, and they really don't want to drive to get some food, and they want some comfort food. Like
Or maybe they're in the
that's an
hospital and they just need to get something because they're injured. They can't walk down the stairs or whatever.
yeah.
Sorry, my cat is
So
filling
yeah,
up his bag. Sorry, go on.
but yeah, the other role that I'm seeing to do in the DR, and the other big project I'm working on right now is I'm working on a zine. Um,
Yes.
prim- yeah, it's called NaviMag. I just launched up the website, and if you're interested, you can click the contact us and send your email over to us. Um, and the goal of it, it's primarily print focused, but we're going to have an online dimension as well for international enjoyers.
Yeah.
Our primary focus, however, is twofold. One is a recruitment mechanism for is the function as a recruitment mechanism for people in the DC area that fit a very particular type. And if you're around these people, and you may know them if you're in other blue areas, they're they're competent. They're in their job. They're living life. They're low elves. They're not high elves who are are really the bohemian artsy types that are in like Soho or whatever,
Mm,
or used to be in Soho. I think I got gentrified out of existence. But uh, the dime square types. They're not that. They're aesthetically open, but they're largely they put on the flannel suit. They're the flannel suit, and they're just living their life. But they're dissatisfied in some respect. They know that something's wrong in the world, and they don't understand it. Like I
mm,
know. I know a friend of mine whose dad is just utterly baffled by like why is this Donald Trump guy so popular? You know, he's destroying our democracy, but he's not like a shit lib. Like he's not like reading Vox or anything like that. If anything, he would be reading the Wall Street Journal. But he doesn't have the moral vocabulary or architecture to be able to understand what the heck is going on. And
Does he
our
understand? Does he see like the suffering of the generation?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him that deeply about it. Really, kind of probed his mind
Oh yeah.
super deeply. But from what I've talked to him, it's he's just, as far as I can tell, he just doesn't see. He doesn't quite get like how bad, like for example, like the opioid crisis is,
Mm-hmm.
and how that could cause people to really, really dislike the system. Um, and as well as I'm guessing as well, just based off of other people I've talked to, guessing he also doesn't understand how bad affirmative action has gotten,
Mm-hmm.
um, etc. Like the whole cascade of issues that are causing people to vote for a guy who, in many cases, they're just openly saying, "I don't care." Like like on Christian Twitter right now, a lot of guys that aren't quite in our sphere but are adjacent to it are saying like, yeah, I'm not voting for Trump because he'll ban abortion. He's not a committed anti-abortionist, but he's going to break the system uh,
Mm-hmm.
that currently supports the whole thing. And it also has helped that he, operationally speaking, has been the most anti-abortion president ever. Um,
Yeah, he's done a lot of
but
work with the courts to make sure that it isn't rampant. You know.
yeah, the yeah, I find it like a indictment on my own on my a sort of sign of judgment on my own elites in my particular tradition of Christianity, evangelicalism, that Trump, because they were all against voting Trump, pietistically saying, he's so vulgar, he's so awful, and a lot of them straight up were just trying to run cover for people who were on the left and wanted to have some sort of reason to justify voting Democrat. Because they think they believe in like a soft version of integralism, where they're
Mm-hmm.
like where they believe like, oh well, I'm against abortion but I want social democracy.
Yeah, big mistake.
Uh, but yeah, and then it turns out Trump under Trump Roe v. Wade is overturned, like or well under his justices anyway. I think Roe v. Wade was repealed after he left office, but it was with his appointees, uh, which
Yeah.
people specifically mocked. Uh, you know, uh, they specifically mocked that line of argumentation that hey, he's going to put justices on there, um, and that won't be able to overturn Roe v. Wade. But yeah, so yeah, the in terms of what we're going for on the magazine in terms of flavor, it's like an underground alt version of the Atlantic / New Yorker. So a
Mm-hmm.
mixture of fiction, poetry, and tasteful essays. Um, just broadly speaking, like yeah, we're pro free speech guys, but we're dealing with marketing here. No, we're not going to spam the pro gamer word.
Yeah. You have to be reasonable.
Like yeah, as our marketing tagline says, we accept all was it excellent or all submissions of quality and taste. Like you guys do things that are tasteful. Generally speaking, we're going to bias towards essays that are more perennial in nature than current events. Though certainly we are open to current events stuff, particularly if you can make it so that we know that it's going to age well. And in terms of what we're doing with the print issues, which you will be able to buy, however, it's probably going to be better for you if you buy them like a whole set of issues or something like that, because shipping costs are going to eat you. Um, the we're trying to push print as a medium, and this touching back at McLuhan. We're trying to push print to its utter limits at what it can do as a medium, because we're going to be using a unique format of using QR codes to encode text.
Mm.
Like you know what QR codes are, right?
Yep. Yeah, those little square things.
Yeah, the little square things that restaurants all started discovering that they could use during COVID. Um, the normally, strictly speaking, QR codes are just a medium to encode information. They're just a format.
Mm-hmm.
And normally they just use them as pointers because they're nice and small. So you just get a website link from it, and then you can go to the website or PDF or whatever that they want you to read.
Mm-hmm.
But they can actually store a pretty substantial bit of information for the larger formats. The largest format can store a little under 4 kilobytes of information, which is about 800 words.
That's pretty
And
crazy.
so, yeah. And so under experiments, I've been able to store roughly about 4 times as much information in QR codes compared to normal size text. Maybe I could store an equivalent amount of text if I made really small letters, but then that runs into its own issues. So, so our plan is to use QR code text to compress a lot of information into it, as well as other types of interesting information that can be interpreted for other things. Like, for example, if you go onto coding YouTube, you can see people try to make video games that are completely enclosed inside a QR code. It's easier if you do something that's browser oriented, because the browser does a lot of the heavy lifting. But some people have done it in assembly, so it's just a completely it requires no pre-existing code, software or anything like that. It's not presuming you have a Chrome or something like that to support it. But also, more importantly, I think we'll be able to get an app developer or develop one in house to have a MIDI converter to be able to store songs through MIDI codes. So we'll be able to include soundtracks for embedded soundtracks in the document itself. And that's the key thing here that I'm going for. It's not like a pointer with a menu where you have to maintain the QR code all the time, or the link all the time to make sure it doesn't get broken. Rather, the entirety of the information is embedded in the text itself.
That's pretty cool.
I think, yeah, and that's kind of pushing the angle that I'm ultimately shooting for my critique, sort of both Baudrillard and McLuhan to a certain degree, and that I think that the only way forward is that we cannot escape the hyperreal nor the technological society and the effects of the pushing of media and technology to its limits. Rather, we need to live with the fact that I think Baudrillard is partially wrong. I think we've always had elements of the hyperreal with us, going back to Homer. Poetry is a form of a hyperreal human speech, where we manipulate it in order to make it even better, to emphasize certain things. There's a famous passage where, for example, Homer's talking about the waves on the beach, and the way the particular rolling of the rolling of the tongue that the pronunciation produces is like a wave in your mouth. There's all these little things where we're trying to emphasize and make something more real than real, through technological manipulation. And I think that the proper Christian thing to do is that we have to accept that we are partially hyperreal creatures, because by nature we are liminal creatures. We're ensouled bodies. We're weird compared to the natural world, and we have to learn how to regulate that. How to both enjoy the aspects of the hyperreal that we ourselves have created, but also know, and this is something I see even on the DR, that those media people that when you scream at Nancy Pelosi on Twitter, she's a human. She's just
Yeah.
like you. She goes to she goes to the Shake Shack or the McDonald's or whatever. She has her own foibles, her own uh, real real normal human desires. Um, I know a lot of people don't like Lex Friedman, but I highly recommend uh, Lex Friedman's interview with Jared Kushner because I was shocked when I listened to it and I realized, like, oh no, Jared would absolutely be one of us if he wasn't born in like a super rich family because the dude's just a negotiation autist.
Mm.
He he really he would really enjoy our conversations genuinely. I think that and when he was talking about like how, oh yeah, I was sitting down with like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and I forget the guy from Kentucky who ran the Senate for a
Oh,
while.
Mitch
His name is
McConnell.
escaping me.
Mitch
Yeah,
McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. Yeah, Mitch McConnell. Um, we all sat around dinner and we were able to talk over our problems and all that stuff. I think he's very genuine. I think that that's something that everyone kind of missed in our characterization of Jared. That everyone was saying, oh, he's just a shield for Israel. He's just he's the grand manipulator. And it's like, no, he's a negotiation autist, and Trump doesn't have he's not a hardline principled guy who's going to crack the whip on his autists when they when they screw his grand political agenda. Um,
Yeah.
he just he just and that's partially why his foreign policy was so successful because I think Jared is really that good. He was able to negotiate and broker deals as well as Trump. Trump's also good at negotiating deals as well.
Yeah.
But that shows up in other things like domestic politics, where it is a Manichaean war. Diplomacy abroad is very easy. It's easy to make not zero sum. Here, however, there's no everyone wins. There's no everyone wins. There's not a lot of sorry. There's not a lot of everyone wins categories. A lot of it's very zero sum. So
Yeah.
it, look,
Well,
it looks like Trump's compromising.
you know the you mentioned all that the QR code and stuff like that. Have you talked to Charlemagne about this?
No. Does he have some sort of angle on that?
He does a lot of coding. I think I think he'd be interested in this. Like it sounds very it's almost steampunky. You know, there's something it's hard to put a word on it, but there's something steampunk about it, and I think I think you'd be interested.
My good friend Oz and I were out walking in Annapolis recently. And he kind of commented on on my particular aesthetic, because I'm very yaki, if you know what that is, on Twitter. Um, I really like technological acceleration and development, but at the same time, aesthetically, I'm very kind of like genteel. A lot of people have said I look like a Southern gentleman. I'm like it's kind of like a weird mix of like and steampunk and cyberpunk, where I'm very ear to the ground on a lot of technological developments, but I have a weird focus because I really like pushing old technology to its limits, and
Mm,
I'm very comfortable with being with technology, but not of technology, where I'm able to I'm also able to just go back to the family estate and just enjoy how old things are. But
mm.
I'm not beholden to the old things. I don't worship them. I'm not I'm searching for a term. I'm hoping someone in the audience can come up with a term for these types of
Nostalgic?
people. Uh, no, not nostalgic. It's like this very particular type of person that it's a particular type of Christian. Typically on Twitter, you'll see them more in the trad cat sphere. But there's also like Protestant versions where they really love they really love Tweed. They love Tolkien, Lewis, George MacDonald, and they like quoting the same about 30 authors or so about the old things. Chesterton too. They that's just their thing. That they're just like fans of that milieu of that intellectual aesthetic milieu. And I don't know. I need to come up with a term for it because I like these people at the same time. I'm like, but you do realize that like the same time period produced T.S. Eliot. And
Mm,
arguably, we are going under something way, 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 way worse, civilizationally speaking, than World War One. and what do we have to show for it? Like, who's our Elliot? Who's going to talk about what the wasteland is now? Because it's one thing to have a generation of broken men. Now we don't even have a generation of humans. Quite frankly, like people are just like they view themselves as almost like they view
Cyber,
themselves as autonomous economic units
yeah,
that don't even have the dignity in many cases to be self-interested. Um,
self-destructive pseudo cyborgs.
that's actually a good turn of phrase. Like that, they're because they live so they either are completely out of it, or they're so embedded into the hyperreal, into the thing on their hands, that effectively they are pseudo cyborgs.
Mm.
And either way, they're either I guess a few are really touching the grass, or as I like to say, touching the astroturf. Um,
Mm.
the and kind of grill, getting into the grill and all that stuff. Like for example, my brother, he started a family and all that. But in their case, in that case they're kind of hobbits that have managed to escape the worst of it. The rest, they're just not making it,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's really nobody outside of us is really like. You do have a few other people maybe, but no one's really like saying like, no, this is a civilizational crisis. I mean, you got people in South Korea talking about this because it's so bad over there. But by and large, it's like, where are our literati and our poets and our writers mourning the, you know, essentially like a civilizational equivalent of a Tylenol overdose,
Well, yeah.
which is one of the worst way to die.
Well, there are the Marxists, but like they have all the wrong solutions, unfortunately. But the thing with the Marxists, they can see something's wrong. Um, I mean, the way they want to fix it is like even worse, but I can at least at least there's some people over there, and in the past, not that the solution was not that things were solved, but uh, people that fall into Marxism, because it can be attractive to certain types of people, they can be knocked out of it. You know, um,
Yeah,
it's not the
yeah,
easiest
I
thing.
do. I do say that what is it? This is kind of an extension of I forget who said this. Someone said that like all of our in a meme format, like all our political, like 80% of our political problems are people suppressing their unexamined what is it race play sexual fetishes or whatever. um, I think there's an element of truth to that, and that essentially, like the way I think one possible solution for the cultural war literally is going to be us essentially trying to have to get good enough to save all the e-girls of all stripes and varieties. As much as I hate to say it, fellas, because like he saw, I mean, he kind of saw a joking version of that when that Swedish guy seduced a Jernifah type in Sweden who was Somali, and he got to figure out who were the informers. But a more serious version is just like straight up like, guys, you can change her and save her if you're Giga Chad enough.
Yeah, exactly. They'll follow along.
But
Yeah,
that's going to require like, but that's basically praying for the a sort of cultural event akin to like the First Great Awakening.
yeah, yeah. So let's go on. I got basically one more question for you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about society, what would you choose to do? Now it can't be huge, like
Yeah.
it can't be like too encompassing, but just like one thing.
Uh, ban abortion except for like when it's to save the life of the mother.
Hmm.
I mean that in the strict medical sense, not the, oh no, I'm gonna have postpartum depression and kill myself. Like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
I mean I mean, like the ectopic pregnancy type of very rare scenarios.
Yeah, fair enough. That's fair. I think most people would totally understand that because, like, you know, they're both gonna they're both gonna croak under that situation, right?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's there are situations where you do have a choice. Like I'm aware of a scenario where a woman got cancer while she was pregnant, and she opted to not have chemotherapy so her baby wouldn't die.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a case where it was like it was a choice between, mother and child, and the mother chose her child. Um, but yeah, most of the time it's both are going to die, or as I found out recently, apparently most cases in ectopic, or I forget how you pronounce it, pregnancies where it happens outside the womb, typically the baby's already dead, so it's like mostly a miscarriage.
Yeah.
But still, in some cases you do have to you are removing the baby from any chance of life, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully, medical science will get better. I do support artificial wombs because of that. But I know that man's hearts are wicked, and they'll be used for wicked ends, as they always do with technology. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, you've seen kids without parents, how they've struggled. I want I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to be a artificial womb baby and never have even like the physical connection to the parent, you know.
yeah, I would hope that artificial wombs are just used as essentially an emergency measure. Like
Yeah.
I very strongly suspect there almost certainly is some sort of biological thing that we just don't understand because people are complicated. Where it's like even if it were reserved to like the best example, where it's like IVF extension, where it's like a woman's reproductive system is show shot, but she still has eggs and they want to have a child, so they have an artificial womb to raise the baby. There's probably still going to be issues there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm thinking in the case of like like the mother, where she had to make the choice between chemo or her baby. If we could have an artificial womb to, where we could save both, that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I understand everyone is going to be talking about man-made horrors beyond your imagination because men are wicked.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is that that's gonna be with us forever, for the most part, you know, the wickedness.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's as you said, you can see certain situations, but then again, look what they've done in Canada with MAID, for example. So yeah, you have to
Yeah,
be. I think as long as you have a strong sort of moral backbone, you can probably make it work. But
yeah. I care about those sorts of situations, but ultimately, theologically I'm a post millennialist. I think that the gospel will continue to spread, and the world will become less tainted by sin, um, by the effects of sin as a society becomes more Christian, and that while it seems pretty bad right now, we went from a world in the medieval time. I know people talk about how they had like a third of their days were rest days because of feast days and all that stuff, but 50% of children under 5 died. Like,
mm,
guys, if you look at what people did, they always tried to escape subsistence agriculture. Um, and while it's really bad and wicked right now, and America's heaping up judgment upon herself for her sins, um, in many respects, it's less worse than uh, what we had in Christendom, just from like a bare bones, like day to day life situation. Um, and hopefully, America survives her judgment, or God foresees the judgment, and she repents. Um, and there will be a time when every where families will be strengthened, not torn down by the state, and children will be protected once more.
mm-hmm,
But we got to keep that in sight, because that's ultimately what we're fighting for.
definitely. So we're coming up on the end here. Do you have anything that you want the audience to check out after this interview? I've put the link to your magazine Navi What did I write down?
Yeah,
Navi.org, navimag.org. Then we also have
yeah,
your X profile, J. Coriolanus.
yeah,
Coriolanus.
Coriolanus.
And
Uh,
Angman, R_Angman. So if you want
yeah,
to check that
yeah,
out, you can click those links.
yeah, Orange Man. The
Oh,
one of my
okay.
co-editors. Yeah, it's a clack of Orange Man.
Yeah, exactly.
The I forgot to include the link, but also I will shill Ozzy the Ozzyocrat. I think this is handle on Twitter. Um, uh, uh, I'll if you can edit the links and posts, I'll be able to send you a link for
Is it
his Twitter. He's also helping.
Autisticrat? Is that what you're talking?
No, not Autisticrat. Oz,
Oh, okay.
like he calls himself Oz the Wizard.
I can put it in the comments after.
He yeah, he's an artist who lives nearby, and he's helping me hoist this magazine into the spotlight. And he's working on getting like a storefront for his art. I've been encouraging him and prodding him to do that because
Mhm.
he's toiling away. But yeah, that. So yeah, those are the things I would like to shill. Uh, just the editor's Twitter accounts and the magazine. If you give us your email, trust me, bro. Orange Man will keep you in mind, and we'll be able to send you for now a free first edition of the digital version of the magazine. We plan to launch our first issue by Ascension Day, and we also are cooking up something for the Old Glory Club grand meeting in June. I can only say that much because I don't want to spoil it, guys.
Yeah,
You gotta come there to find out what it's gonna be.
exactly. Make sure you're at the event. Was it oldgloryclub.com or?
Yeah, you should be able to find the event at oldgloryclub.com.
Yeah, so search. You might have to search it or check out Old Glory Club on Twitter. They'll have links and all that stuff to this event. It's coming up in June. Unfortunately, I can't be there, but maybe hopefully next year I'll be able to go. I was at the last one.
Yeah. Your speech was very interesting.
It was a lot of fun. It's talking to all the guys too after between speeches and um, afterwards and stuff like that. That was a great time and hanging out, drinking and stuff, and you know
Yeah,
you almost get
yeah,
more out of it than the speeches, just with chatting with everybody during the
yeah.
meals and all that.
For people who aren't hesitant, I don't mean to extend this too much. Guys, trust me, going to one of these events is very, for the first time especially, it's a entirely different feeling because for what I noticed from a lot of our guys, it's everyone's kinda is generally speaking like about maybe 60-70%. We're kind of isolated. We usually don't have like a very robust network of people where we can talk honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to go to an event where everyone kind of gets the memes and 95% of the time you know that someone's going to get the in joke. It's like it's like taking a fresh of breath of air after you've been hiding. Well, not hiding. Well,
Taking the mask off.
that breaks. Yeah, taking the mask off. Whatever metaphor you want to use for finally being able to relax, um, and really see you what you are like at full bandwidth, socially speaking.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, any last words? Because we're about to wrap it up.
All my last words are: I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend and go to church and continue to glorify God in everything that you do.
Blessed be. Well, thank you for joining me, Jay, and maybe we'll talk together sometime soon.
Yeah. There's a chance I might be in Montreal soon, so.
Oh, that's only 3,000 miles away from me.
But you don't have to deal with the passport.
True, true, true.